Hello, welcome back to today's lesson. There's no need for me to ramble on about anything as I normally do, so let's just get straight into it. Can you please copy your title, your date, and your learning objective? Today we are looking at the second paragraph for question 5. So pause the video and get this down now, please. Okay. Now we are ready to complete the do now. Please make sure that you are answering these questions in full sentences so that they become valuable revision for you. So you need to be answering these questions here. Pause the video and do that now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to make any corrections. Make sure you're using your purple pen. And these are the things that I would like you to get down. For number 3, there might be a couple more. It's mainly looking at the things that are marked, the things that you get marks for that we looked at yesterday when we were talking about approaching question 5. So there might be a few different things that you've written down that aren't on here. If you're not sure, you can just let me know in an email. But I assume that most of you have got that right. And then we have our zoom out paragraph, and it's really, really important that we continuously revise those paragraph structures. So pause the video and get this corrected now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to move on. So yesterday we looked at our zoom out paragraph, which was paragraph number 1, talking about the whole scene. Today we are going to talk about the zoom in paragraph. I wonder if anyone can figure out what the zoom in paragraph is. A zoom in paragraph is where you describe one specific item in the scene in depth. Now this is personally my favourite paragraph because you're describing one thing in a lot of detail. It really, really allows you to showcase everything that you can do in terms of your language and your language techniques. So I'm going to again show you a paragraph, a zoom in paragraph based on this image where I have zoomed in on one specific item. Now this image here lends itself quite nicely to a zoom in as there are lots of different kind of features. You could zoom in on this snowman, you could zoom in on this car, you could even zoom in on the shooting star up here. There are a number of things that you can focus on. It might not always be the case that you get a picture this busy. There are some images that I have seen for the language paper question 5 that are not busy at all and quite bare. But again, it's about using your imagination. So before I show you this model paragraph for this image, I just want to reiterate describing one specific item in the scene in depth. So this is a very bad quality image, but this might be an image that you get. This is often an image that I use with my younger classes to look at zoom in paragraphs. Just like you to think quickly, I'm just going to give you like 10 seconds, have a think. If you were to do a zoom in paragraph whereby you had to describe one specific item in this scene in detail, what item might you choose? Have a quick think now. Okay, so you might have some ideas in your head. Personally, I would maybe describe the chair. Could maybe describe this palm tree, and you could talk about the trunk of the palm tree. You could talk about the coconuts on the palm tree. You could talk about the texture of the leaves and their bright color. You could talk about one of these kind of deck areas. You could talk about the towel. You could talk about the drink on the table. You might want to zoom in on the boat and talk about the colours on the boat, if there's a flag on the boat, if there's a name on the boat. The idea is that you don't talk about this item, and this item. You just, because that'll be a whole scene paragraph, that'll be a zoom out paragraph. You just choose one and you really, really unpick it in a lot of detail. Like I said, this is my favourite paragraph to write, but I also think it's one of the hardest to get right. So based on our kind of Christmas scene that we started to write about yesterday, I want to show you my zoom in paragraph for that. So let's read it. I'll kind of go over any language that I think you might find challenging. We'll talk about the checklist and then I'll let you go and match things up. Please don't skip any parts of the video because you might miss some really important information. Almost instantly, the exhilarated child stood at the base of the forest green Christmas tree. Minuscule specks of gold glitter covered the magnificent star that stood proudly at the top of the tree. Already, at this stage in the paragraph, it is very, very clear that I am zooming in on the Christmas tree. Just a note on the word minuscule. Again, minuscule is another way to say very, very small. As his sapphire blue eyes scanned the millions of bristles, he was mesmerized by the garnet red tinsel that weaved in and out of the baubles that clung to each branch. At the bottom of the tree, an abundance of presents were neatly piled on top of one another. Abundance just means many. Standing timidly next to the largest present of them all, the elated boy felt as though he knew what was hidden inside the pristine wrapping paper. With wide eyes, the little boy admired the colourful ornaments that decorated the artificial bristles in more detail. Okay, that's my zoom in paragraph. I absolutely loved writing this. It's honestly my favourite thing in the world. And this is the checklist that I used to help me write it. So let's kind of briefly talk about this before I let you go. So you want to start the paragraph describing the character's position near the zoom in. This links to the sentence at the bottom of our zoom out paragraph. The sentence at the bottom of our zoom out paragraph talks about our character's movement towards an item. And then we start our zoom in talking about their position. So there's a thread, which means the paragraphs aren't just kind of separate things. Then you describe 3 features of the zoom in. So whatever you're focusing on, whatever you're zooming in on, you describe 3 features of that. For example, if you were zooming in on the car in the Christmas image, you might talk about the paintwork, you might talk about the windows, and you might talk about the tyres. Okay? We know what fronted adverbials are. We've talked about colour vocabulary. Now, comparative language, standing next to it seemed is the sentence starter that I kind of recommend people to use at the beginning. It might be kind of sitting by the something, it seemed. Looking at the something, it seemed. So you could change that, but as it's our first go, I'd always kind of recommend using this example here. Your final sentence needs to use an interesting verb to describe the character's reaction to the zoom in. Again, this is going to lead into our 3rd paragraph, which we're going to look at tomorrow. All right. What I would like you to do now is open that same document on Show My Homework from yesterday and colour code where this paragraph does this checklist. Pause the video and do that now, please. Okay, so you should have got a perfectly color-coded checklist and paragraph that looks something like this. So let's just unpick a few things here. So starting the paragraph describing the character's position near the zoom in, we've said that the child is our character. It's not a new character, it's the same character as we mentioned in our zoom out paragraph. And we said that they are stood at the base of the forest green Christmas tree. It is really important that within this first sentence, I know what you're zooming in on. There should be never any doubt what you're zooming in on. The 3 features of the zoom in, I've talked about the star, I've talked about the kind of tinsel, and I've talked about the presents at the bottom of the Christmas tree. My colour vocabulary, I've used forest green, sapphire blue, and garnet red to enhance the vocabulary here. This sentence is my comparative, the grey sentence. And then my final is using an interesting verb to describe the character's reaction. I have used the word admired here instead of liked or loved. Again, it's important to notice at this point that I have used some sensory vocabulary as well. Words such as pristine. Words such as artificial. Remember, pristine means like to be perfect, So there's this idea that this wrapping paper around this present looks almost untouched and perfect, which makes it feel more attractive, and it kind of draws us in because we're wondering what this present is, or what is it underneath this perfect piece of wrapping and decorating. So pause the video now if you need to make any corrections to your checklists. If you don't, we can move on. Okay, so like I said yesterday, we're going to be focusing on this image. You should have already planned your zoom out paragraph for this image, where you've talked about the mood and the weather, and you've decided what 3 main items you would like to describe. Now it's time to complete a checklist mind map for the zoom in paragraph. So can you just pause the video quickly and copy this little mind map down before returning so I can explain to you the process again? Okay, so like we just mentioned, in the zoom out paragraph, you have decided to talk about 3 main items. Now, your zoom in, your item for your zoom in might be one of those 3 main items. So if you've decided to describe in your zoom out the wave, the train, and one of the houses, you might now want to zoom in on one of those things. So, for example, if that was me, I would probably quite like to describe the wave, and you would do that by going down the checklist and writing an idea next to the mind map again. So let's just do one together. So I'm just going to write wave here because that's what I'm describing, so I don't forget that that is the thing that I'm focusing on. And I need to start the paragraph describing the character's position near the zoom in. So I'm imagining that my character is probably going to be in the train, in the carriage. So I'm going to kind of say that they are kind of gazing up at the wave. Maybe I'm going to write gazing up at towering wave. Again, that's shorthand notes there. You don't need to write full sentences. That's that step done. Then I want to describe 3 features of the wave. I'm not describing anything else other than the wave. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's really important that we stay focused here. So 3 features of the wave. I might talk about the kind of like the white kind of like foam at the top of the wave. I might also talk about the kind of like the spray coming out of the wave, and I might also talk about any kind of like debris that maybe the wave has picked up. And debris is just kind of like, for example, if there's an earthquake, the debris would be kind of like remnants of buildings or like concrete or stones or things like that. So that is my 3 features of the zoom in. Again, you can kind of use these ideas. I'd prefer you not to just copy what I've written because that's not challenging you in any way. But if you want to use it for inspiration, then you can. But make sure that your zoom in is focusing on something concrete, not something that's like a feeling or something that's non-existent. Make sure it's an actual physical thing that you can see and that you could maybe feel in the scene. Okay, what I'd recommend that you do now is flick between this slide and scroll back to look at the image again and complete this mind map now. Make sure that after you've done that, you have sent me a picture, and I look forward to speaking to you in tomorrow's lesson.